Welcome back to the channel. This is Nasa Strad. For today's tutorial, we'll be learning how to make this turtleneck transparent gown, which can also be made as a top. If it's something you're interested in, keep watching. If you're here to subscribe to the channel, please subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up and let's get right into this. So to start off, I have my pattern unfolded and I'm going ahead to mark my starting line. Now, the length of this pattern is 40 inches. The length of your gown can go as long as you want it to go, okay? Now, from that line there, the first line, I'm going to mark my bust point, my waist, my shoulder to waist, my shoulder to hip, and the full length. Like I said, the length of this paper is about 40 inches, but what I wanted for the length of this gown was 50 inches. So I advise you make yours to get to your ankle so that it gives a better fitting by the time you wear this. So I just went ahead to just make horizontal lines at those points. Now for the full length of this, I'm going to mark 39 inches on this paper. So like I said, what I want is 50 inches. So 50 minus 39, I will have 11 inches left. So while cutting on my fabric, I'm going to add that 11 inches. So I'm going to just write it plus 11 inches so that I'm not mistaken while cutting on my fabric, okay? So note that you can also go ahead to just make this on your fabric directly. So the next thing I'm doing is to take half of my shoulder measurement. I'm just going to mark it at that starting line. And then from that point, I'll go down by 1 inch for my shoulder slant. Now for the neck width, since it is a turtleneck, we're going to use 2.5 inches. So for turtlenecks, our neckline, our neck area isn't wide. So I'm using 2.5 inches for this. And I'll just go ahead to create a slanted line to meet the 1 inch point. Now from that 1 inch point, I'm going to mark my armhole depth. So you're going to get your armhole depth by dividing your round bust by 6 and then adding 1.5 inches to that. So I'm just going to place it from that 1 inches point and then I will mark mine. So when I finished, what I had for mine was 7.5. I just marked my dime and then I connected that in a straight line. Okay, now from that point, I will make a horizontal line like so. So this will serve as my chest line. So now what I'm going to do, I was just trying to ensure that I had this straight coming from the up to that point. I wanted it to match with what I had at the shoulder area, and then I just made my adjustments to that point. Now for this line, my armhole line, I'm going to get the midpoint of that line. I'll make a point, I'll make a mark at that point, and then at that point, I'll go in by half of an inch. And then on the chest line, I will take quarter of my round bust measurement. So I'm just trying to achieve my armhole curve, considering the fact that we'll be attaching sleeves to this later on. So after getting those 3 points, I will just connect them together. Okay, so there we have it. Now, what I'll go ahead to do is to mark my horizontal body measurements. So I'm going ahead to place quarter of my round waist. So that means my round waist divided by 4, my hip divided by 4. I'm going to just place those measurements down. So at this point, if you want to add an allowance to this, note that the fabric is already stretchy, so you don't need to add any ease allowance. Okay, so I just went ahead to connect those points together. Now to get the full length, I'll take the measurement I have around the hip and I'll minus 1 inch from that. So whatever you have around your hip, minus 1 inch and then place it at the full length. Okay, so the gown is not free at the end. It's going to have a fitting at the end. Okay, so that's why you're minusing 1 inch from that. And you go ahead to just make your connection. So you can see the curves around there that we have. Now for the neck depth of the front, we're going to use 2.5. So remember I said 2.5 for the neck width, so we're also using 2.5 for the neck depth. So when connecting your neck depth, just connect it this way. Ensure that it is not so deep. Remember that is a turtleneck, so you don't need the neckline to be wide. Now I'll go ahead and just add my stitching allowance of 1 inch. You can also use a stitching allowance of ½ inch. Okay, so at most the stitching allowance you should use for this is 1 inch, considering that it is a transparent fabric, is a net fabric. it is stretchy, okay, in nature. So you don't need to add too much to this. So 1 inch, at most 1 inch works perfectly. But if you can stitch down with half of an inch, go ahead and do that. So if you want to add darts to this, you can also place your darts. So after doing my markings, I just went in with my scissors to cut it out. So remember that we'll be adding to the length later on while cutting on the fabric. So this is what I have for the front. I'm just going to label this a front pattern, and I'll keep this aside so we can work on the back. Now for the back, I have my fabric also single placed. Now from this end, I'm going to mark 1 inch. I'm marking 1.5 inches, sorry, from the end here. I'm going to mark 1.5 inches inwards down to the full length. Okay. So now this 1.5 inches I'm marking, it's going to serve. Sorry, I'm marking 1 inches. Okay, not 1.5 inches to the full length. It's going to serve as my zip allowance. I'm just using 1 inch for that. Like I said, it's a stretchy fabric. You do not need much fabric inside of this. You don't need too much allowance inside of this. Okay, the fabric, you're not turning it over with a lining, so you should consider that while adding your allowances. So after marking that to the full length, I connected that, marked my starting line, that's the shoulder line, and from there I'm going ahead to mark my vertical point, which is the shoulder to the bust, the shoulder to the waist, the shoulder to the hip, okay, and the full length. So ensure that if you're drafting this out on a paper, you take the same full length you had on your front paper also on the back, so that while cutting on your fabric you can just add the extra allowances. So I have my vertical measurements down. I just went in to just label them. Now what I'm going to do is to also write that plus 11 inches at the edge to enable me remember that I'm going to be adding 11 inches to the length. So I'm going ahead to take half of my shoulder measurement and then the same neck width I have in front. And then I came down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope and connected that to the neck width. Now from the armhole area, I'll come down by my armhole depth. Remember I said to get that, you divide your round bust by 6 and then you add 1.5 inches to whatever you get. So I'm just making my vertical line and a horizontal line at that point. So ensure that what you have at the shoulder and what you have around the chest point, they are matching. So the next, you're going to get the midpoint of that line, and then you get quarter of your round bust measurement on the chest line, and you connect it together. So there's a difference with connecting the front armhole and the back armhole. So ensure that your horizontal measurements are taken after your zip allowance line. Okay, you take your measurements after the zip allowance line. So I'm going ahead to just add my body measurement, quarter of the round waist, quarter of the round hip, and I connect that together. So remember, quarter of the round waist is your round hip, round waist, round hip divided by 4. Now to get the full length also, I'm going to take what I have around the hip minus 1 inch from that and then place it at the full length and connect. So you notice I'm using my curve rule so that I'm going to have a perfect curve at the end of the day. Now just go ahead and add my stitching allowance of 1 inch on the various points. Okay, so now that we have that down, what we need to work on is the neckline for the front, for the back, sorry. So for the back neckline, we're going to use a neck depth of 1 inch. So remember I said it is a turtleneck. Remember it's a turtleneck, so your neck needs to be high enough for you to have that turtleneck effect. And I just went ahead to connect it. So ensure that it is not deep while you're connecting. And then I'm extending this to the zip line area. Now what I'm going to do is to extend the waist point outwards like so, and then from the edge of it I'm going to come in by half of an inch. So I'm trying to snatch the waist so that by the time I fix my zipper it's going to be relaxed at the back and it's not puffing. We're not going to have any zipper bulge on this. Okay, so I just took that out and then I'll connect this to the hip area and then to the bust point area. So I'm just going to terminate it at those points and then cut it out. So this is what we have for the back pattern, and I'll just label this the back pattern and go ahead to cut it out. So the difference we have between the front and the back is the zip allowance for the back, the neck depth for the back, and also the armhole curve. They are different for both of them. So if you don't want to add zip to this, that means your fabric needs to have a certain level of stretch. It needs to be very stretchy if you're not adding, so that you can easily put this on. All right. So this is what I have for the back. Now I'm going to cut on my fabric. So this is the fabric I'm using is a chantilly lace. I have about 2 yards. That's what you'll be needing depending on your size. Now I'm just going from the base to mark 11 inches. Now that is because the lace I'm working with has like a scallop end, and I want to use this for the ends of my gown. So I just came up by that 11 inches, which I'll be adding to my piece. And then after that, I will place my pattern from that line upwards. Now, like I said before, ensure that try to get your length to the ankle. It gives a better fitting when it's at the ankle area. Okay, you might have seen them in you've seen them on the thumbnail. You see how nice that looked. Okay, mine didn't get there because I didn't take the accurate measurement, my shoulder to ankle length measurement. So ensure you take your shoulder to ankle length measurement, and then ensure that the gown gets to your ankle. It gives a nicer fitting. And I'm just placing my pattern down, pinning them so that it stays in place. It's properly, so you can see how I have this. Now I want to cut this out. So when cutting this out, what I'm going to do is that around the neck area, I'm going to add half of an inch. That will be the allowance to join my collar later. I'll add half of an inch at the shoulder area. Those are the only places I'll be adding allowances. So if you didn't add any allowance while drafting your pattern, you can just add 1 inch or half of an inch by the sides. Okay. So I just went ahead to just cut it out. So when you want to cut out the back, you're going to do the same thing. Just add your allowance, um, your neck allowance and the shoulder allowance to your back piece. Also ensure to add 11 inches of length allowance if you drafted this on your pattern. So this is what I have for the back after I finish cutting. We're going to start off with the back. Now my back piece is placed right side to right side, and I'm going ahead to just pin it down so that they stay together. You know, this kind of fabric, you need to be careful with it. So we want to measure where we want our zip to stop. We want to stitch the back part. The back is going to have a slit because it is a bit fitted from the hip area to the full length. So you need to have a slit so that you can easily move in this, so that you're not stuck while you're trying to work with this. So the zip allowance we added was 1 inch. You're going to measure that 1 inch around that zip allowance area to the full length. Then after that, what you're going to do is to measure where you want your zipper to end. So in this case, I'm using 20 inches for where I want my zipper to end. This is where I want it to end. And then from the edge, you're going to take the length of your slit you want. Now, I always say the length of your slit depends on the length of your dress. So in this case, since it's getting to the ankle, you need to have a long slit that gets to the knee area so that you can walk perfectly while you're wearing this. So I just marked that down. Now I'm going to mark 1 inch down to that point, and then I go ahead and stitch it down. So I was just ensuring that I was on my 1 inch track. You don't want to make mistakes while you're working with this, because losing this kind of fabric can be taxing. So this is what it looks like after I finish stitching down. You can see what it looks like. And I just went ahead to just iron open that point. Now for this area here, the slit area, just go ahead and fold it in and stitch it down. You can use a hemming gum to also keep it in place. So this is what mine looks like after I finish doing that. You can see how nice it looks when it is placed properly. Now what I'll do is to go ahead and fix my zip. So I'm using a small head invisible zipper for this. I'll just go ahead and fix the zipper to that point. So this is what it looks like after fixing my zipper. Now I'm going to bring in the front piece and I will align it to this. So I'm going to place the front to the back, right side to right side. I'm going to align the shoulder areas and I'll also align the sides. Then I'll go ahead and stitch it by half of an inch around the shoulder area. And then for the side, I will stitch by 1 inch following the curves of the body. So this is what it looks like after I finish. I've stitched down the shoulder and then I've also stitched down the sides. Okay. So what we want to work on next is the collar for this piece. So now for this, I have my paper. I'm just going ahead to rule a line at the base. That's where my measurement is going to start from. Now, what I'm going to do is to get the midpoint of my paper. And then by using my tape, I'll just fold my tape into two, get the midpoint, make a mark there. Okay. Now on one side, this part here, I'll write the front. Okay. And on this part, I'll write the back. So now I'm going to bring my piece. I'm going to take the measurement from the back piece. Now you take the measurement from that zipper area to the shoulder area. Now since the paper is not folded into two, okay, you also have at the back of your mind that this is going to the other side also. So I'm just taking what I had was 3 inches and I marked it down. That's for the back from the zipper to the shoulder area, 3 inches. Now I'm going to take for that of the front by folding the front into two. I'm going to take from the midpoint of my shoulder, sorry, the midpoint of my neckline to the shoulder joining area. I'm going to take that measurement. So what I had for the front, it's 5 inches. I will just go ahead and mark it on the part labeled front. So just go ahead and just place it at that point also. So now we have that down. Now what we're going to do is that on the front part, you go up by half of an inch. You're just going to go up from that point by half of an inch. You're going to make a mark at that point, and then you're going to use the curve part of your rule to just create a curve to this other point. So I just extended that so that it is in a straight line because I don't want to be mistaken. You don't want to add extra allowances to your piece. So I'm just going to use my curve rule to connect from that half of an inch point to the center of my paper like so. So this is what I have. Okay. Now from there, I will just extend this line again because I want my measurements to be in a straight line. Okay. Now from there, that half of an inch point we came up by, you're going to mark 1.5 inches. So I'm using 1.5 inches for my collar height. You can use 1 inch, you can use 2 inches, you can use 1.5 inches. It depends on um the the length, the height of the collar you want. So I just marked that. And then I went in from that point by half of an inch. Okay. And then I'll connect it to the end. Okay. This helps me to create a curve around that point. So I was just ensuring that my measurements were right. And I'll just connect that half-inch point I went in by like so. Okay. So we have the front now. Now for the back on this other point, we're going to go up by quarter of an inch and then mark it down. So you're going to make a point there and then you connect to the midpoint of the paper you have. Okay, just like we did for that of the front. You're going to connect it like so. So I'm just going to extend this line upward so that I'm on the right track. Now from that point, that quarter of an inch point, I'm going to mark 1.5 inches, which is my collar height. I'm going to mark it on this point now. I'm connect it together. So I'll use my curve rule like so. Okay, so I'm just turning this around. Okay, I'll just use my curve rule to just connect both points together to give me the color for this piece. Okay, so this is all for this color. You can see how nice it looks already. Now I'm just going ahead to um label this part. This is the neck area, that's the up area, and then I'm labeling this the front and then the back so that we're not mistaken, and I'll go ahead to cut it out. Okay, so this is what we have for the collar. Now we're going to bring in our fabric. So for the fabric, you're going to fold into four, and then you place the parts labeled F, which is the front, at the midpoint. Remember, the front has like the front is closed, so that's the part that will be on the folded end of your piece. Okay, so you're going to place it this way. So while cutting out, you're going to add half of an inch all round. From the base, you add half of an inch. At the side, you add half of an inch, and also at the top, you add half of an inch. That will serve as your stitching allowance. So this is what I have for mine. Now I'm going to take off my pattern, and then I will open this up. So ensure that while cutting this, your piece is on the wrong side, okay? And then I'll just pin it down so that it stays in place, and then I can stitch on this. So what we're going to do is that we're going to stitch from the sides to the top and then to the other side by half of an inch, and then leave this other side open. So I've done that, and I'm just cutting out the excess I have from the side at the top and then the other side. So you're just going to cut off the excess you have from the parts which you stitch down. Okay, take them off so that it is relaxed by the time you iron this. So now we're going to flip this to the right side. You want to be careful if you're working with this kind of fabric, okay, so that it doesn't tear while you're trying to do this. You flip this to the right side and go ahead and press it. So this is what it looks like after I gave it a good press. Okay, this is what it looks like. So now I'm going to get the midpoint of my neckline, that's for the neck piece, and then the midpoint of the collar, and then you place them together. So you're going to place from the wrong side of your piece. You place one part of the open ends of your collar to the wrong side of your piece. You're going to pin them down properly. So this is what I have after I finished. I'll go ahead and stitch it down by half of an inch. So I've stitched it down, and I'm just going ahead to take off the excess zip at the top and then the excess fabric I have inside after stitching it down. Okay, you want your piece to be relaxed. Now I'm going to flip this to the right side. So ensure while you're doing this, this is coming out looking nice. Okay, just stick your hands into the edges and then bring it out well. Now we're going to use the excess on this other part to cover the rough edge of your piece. So while doing this, you should pin it down so that it just stays in place. In case there's any adjustment, you can do that before going ahead to stitch. Like I said, you need to be careful with this type of fabric so that it doesn't tear while you're working on it. So you're going to pin it down properly, and after that you just go ahead and stitch at the edge of this to keep everything in place. So this is what I have after I finish, and you can see how the zip looks. So we are going to fix the hook and eye at the top later on. Now the next thing we're going to work on is the sleeve. Now for the sleeve, I have my piece of fabric folded into four for both parts of my sleeve, and I've gone ahead to draft out my pattern for the sleeve. Okay, now the measurement for my sleeve, the pattern of my sleeve is from my shoulder to my wrist. For my sleeve, the length of my sleeve is 24 inches. Okay, now from the piece I have here, the fabric I have here is actually longer than what I have on my paper. That's because I'll be adding extra inches to that. So from the base, I came up by 2 inches, and I'm going to just connect that to the full length of this. Okay, and then I'll place my paper, my pattern from that 2 inches upwards. Okay, remember I said we're adding extra to this. Now on my pattern, I will go up by 4 inches from the edge of my pattern paper, and I will just make a mark right there, and I'll rule a line across it. Okay, so after that, I'm going to get the midpoint of that line which I just marked by folding my tape into two. I'll get the midpoint, make it mark, and then rule vertical line downwards like so. Okay, so next I'll go in with my scissors, my paper scissors, and then I will just cut through that line this way, and then cut this other one this way. So you're not going to cut it to the end, just cut till you have a little piece still hanging right there. Okay, so now we're going to place our paper on our fabric, okay, and then cut out to create the type of sleeve we want. So you're going to place it this way. So ensure that you're placing the center front of your pattern to the folded end of your fabric. You don't want to have two pieces of this and then you start joining. So see how I'm placing this. Now I'm going to extend this other part like so, okay? It's going to give me a bell effect at the wrist area. And then I'll just pin them properly. Ensure that this is well placed down before you go ahead to cut out. So while cutting out, I'm going to add half of an inch to the side. That's because I didn't add my stitching allowance while I was cutting this pattern. I just I didn't add anything at all. So I'm just going to add half of an inch to the side for stitching it down. Now we're going to take off our patterns. We want to stitch the sleeve together. So you're going to place your sleeve right side to right side. I was just trying to open up the stop because it was stuck together. Now taking one part of your sleeve, okay, I'm just showing with one part. You're going to place it right side to right side and then stitch by the sides by half inch. So this is what it looks like after I finish. Now I'm just taking the piece extending out at the ends of the sleeve, okay? And I'll bring in my piece, that's the gown piece, and I'll go ahead and just attach my sleeve to the armhole areas. So this is what it looks like after I finish doing this. This is what our turtleneck transparent gown looks like after we finish doing this. So if you found this video helpful, let me know in the comment section. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Please like this video. If you're yet to subscribe to the channel, please subscribe. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, let me know and then I will answer them. Thank you for watching. Bye.